We're online. If you want to ask a question, if you're online, feel free either to raise your hand or write a comment in the chat, and I will pick those up. So I'm going to turn back to you, Dr. Bodiroza, and ask you to what is actually happening in Afghanistan and what is the situation for women and girls right now?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. So let me just start by saying that Afghanistan in June 2022 is the most dangerous place on the planet to be a woman. It is also the most dangerous place on the planet to be a pregnant woman. I will start, usually you have to forgive me, you know, I'm a person, my colleague Manil knows that. I mean, who likes to tell the stories. I will be repeating myself, and she probably heard many of those things, you know, repeatedly over and over again. But let me just try to put the thing in the context and to illustrate and try to ask you to get in touch with the emotions and try to picture the situation for women and girls in Afghanistan. I will go a little bit in the history. That is one of my passion. And I will talk briefly for 2 minutes about two inspirational women who continue to this day to inspire millions of women in Afghanistan. First is Nadia Anjuman. First time when the Taliban took over, I mean, she was 10 years girl who had the dreams of becoming an engineer, becoming a poet. Taliban took over, education stopped, the dream stopped. By the social norms, by the cultural norms, woman is not supposed to have a dream. She's not supposed to look or strive for more. However, thanks to the amazing professor of Herat University, Muhammad Rahyab, he put together Nadia and a few other women in the Golden Circle Sewing School. So for everybody else, I mean, they were learning how to sew. I mean, what women should do in their household. What was happening in that school was education. They were taught what's happening in the world, politics, poetry, literature. They were reading the books. When Taliban at that time were ousted, Nadia continued her education. She became a poet. She wrote her first book of the poem was Black Pearl, Dark Pearl. And all her poems were about you know, women in Afghanistan, about their desire to become better, to want more for their lives. One day in 2008, in November, her husband, who was a professor, who did not like the fact that she's inspiring so many women, killed his wife. So Nadia became a victim of gender-based violence. Another inspiring figure, Colonel Kakar. She was born in Kandahar to the family of the police officer, brother police officer, father police officer. And she had a dream of becoming the first police officer in Afghanistan. And she succeeded. She was the first graduate of the police academy in Kandahar. And not only that, she was the first investigator of the gender-based violence in Afghanistan. And one day in 2008, going to work, she became victims of the conservative elements of the people who did not believe that women got the place and space to talk about the gender, to want more, to dream about more, to inspire more for, and inspire other women for. And I can go on and on and on, because if you're looking at Afghanistan, there is a history starting from Queen Gahwar Shah, who was 14 years ruling the country in the Timurid Empire. Queen Thoraya Tarzi, who put first the Women's Society, first journal for women in Afghanistan. So it's not that women of Afghanistan were always repressed. Now, what is happening today in Afghanistan? Let me just focus on 3 points. What UNFPA is doing, what is the political environment, and what I see as a future for Afghanistan. So after the 15th of August, obviously, operating environment for the everybody changed. International community started withdrawing, leaving UN as the only international entity present in the country, together with some courageous international NGOs to work and provide services for women and girls. We are focusing our intervention on the 3 pillars. All our services are women-centered services, and they are basically tailored under the gender-based violence and protection services for women and girls. maternal health services, and then providing supplies. The gender-based violence, our flagship, we were focusing before the 15th of August, we had the health sector response to the victims of gender-based violence and the police sector response, basically legal response. For obvious reason, I mean that legal response is not any longer possible. On the morning of the 16th of August, all our women-centered services, protection services for the victims of gender-based violence closed. But then within 3 to 4 weeks, we were able to recover them all. So today, not only that all our services that existed before the 15th of August are operational and working with the same women providing services for the victims of gender-based violence, but also we expanded our services to the areas where we never had them before. Our second pillar is basically maternal health pillar. Our flagship project is family health houses. UNFPA is traditionally focusing on the most remote area of the country, that the so-called wide areas, which is approximately 10% catchment area, which is around 4 million people. And just to illustrate, as I'm really traveling a lot within the country, when you're going outside of the urban areas, it really takes a lot of effort and a lot of, I dare to say, stamina and persistence to get there. I remember when I was going first time to the Kundi province, they told me that we will travel 4 hours to one of our site, family health houses. It came to a shock that site is only 30 kilometers away from the capital. But there are no paved roads. It's a very inaccessible mountain area, very hard to reach. So that's where UNFPA is. And that's where we were in the past 20 years. And most of those areas were back then for the past 20 years under Taliban control. Now, the beauty about this project is that not only it's providing life-saving services for pregnant women, because saving their lives, but also particularly in this context of today's Afghanistan, focusing on education of the girls. So we are working with the community elders. We identify together with them some girls from the community. We send those girls for 2 years to community midwifery school, and then 2 to 4 months practice internship. And after that, they're going back to their villages, where meanwhile, together with the community, we build a structure that we call Family Health House, where midwife works and help deliver babies. So in one of my visits to those provinces, the community elder and head of the community shura told me in this village that I visited that before 2016, there was at least one woman dying giving birth in 1 week. Since we opened that house, not a single woman dying giving a birth. And that tells you, the power of having those services in those remote areas, because majority of maternal mortality is coming from those remote areas. Now, as a result of what's happening right now, and if you're looking in retrospect, what happened in the past 20 years, one of the areas that we can be really proud of is a major reduction in maternal mortality rates. It went from 1,400 per 100,000 live births to 638 per 100,000 births in 20 years. UNFPA did the modeling, what will happen now? And that modeling is based on the fact that development funding disappeared, that the financial sector is in a dismay, in a total collapse, and that the health sector is in total collapse. So in our modeling provides very strong argument to the fact that between now and 2025, there will be between 51,000 and 57,000 of additional maternal deaths per year, additional maternal deaths, and then 4.9 million on unintended pregnancies. And if you are looking, and I talk about progress in past 20 years, we will lose all the progress of past 20 years in 2 years only, if something dramatically does not change very soon in Afghanistan. And then finally, as a third pillar, we are delivering a lot of supplies. This year alone, I will just focus on the Q1. If you're looking Q1, we reach over 920,000 people with our services. And that is basically consolidated number of protection services, maternal health services. Then we contributed 500,000 people with the emergency reproductive health kits. We assisted 30,000 people with winterization kits. As you know, this past winter in Afghanistan was one of the harshest winter in recent history. We over 78,000, if I'm not mistaken, 78,000 women benefited from maternal health services, and 178,000 visited our protection services. So that's in a nutshell what was happening and what is UNFPA role and how we are assisting in the current context of Afghanistan. Now, if you're looking, my final point is, what is next? I mean, the situation in Afghanistan is complex and is becoming even more challenging with the current, global situation and what is happening in Ukraine. There is, if you're looking at the structure of authorities, de facto authorities in Afghanistan, we have two fraction. One is very conservative, one is less conservative. Very conservative Haqqani network that is, pushing towards a super conservative agenda that is in a collision with our desire to provide more rights for women and girls in Afghanistan. And then less conservative wing that are, I call them pragmatists, who know that there is no future for Afghanistan without, following the general trends and providing women with the basic rights. And I'm sure that there will be a lot of interest in a question about rights to education, rights to work, and all of that. So that is the internal struggle that is right now happening. In my work and engagement with them, and I'm meeting with de facto ministers, with the de facto governors. I'm also traveling a lot. It is also surprising that there is no clear, it is not black and white, right? The narrative outside of Afghanistan is it's very black, that there is no hope. But still, we see, I'm sure that you all know that in March, girls were supposed to go back to school, and then even the de facto Ministry of Education was caught by surprise by the decree that they cannot go back to school. And that is the narrative. Probably you don't know that in a number of the provinces in Afghanistan, are not following that that decree. I was recently in Mazar, and the governor clearly say that girls are going in school, and I could see girls going to the classes in their uniforms. And Mazar is not the only one. I was visiting some of the. I always tell the story of this Kal Islam village near the border with Iran, very remote. 20 years under Taliban, we had our family held house there. I'm meeting with the community elders and community shura, and I'm super careful. How much and what I'm going to ask for women. Just out of the concerns that if I ask too much, that they can basically close a little that we're already providing in that village. And then out of the nowhere, by the head of the shura, he's asking me for some additional things for the village and asking community school for girls. And Pernille will laugh because I tell that story as always. Last thing in my briefing is signs of hope for Afghanistan. And my recent trip a couple of months ago to Jalalabad, and that is a road trip from Kabul to Jalalabad. So coming back, I spotted two girls playing cricket. And, I stopped the entire convoy, including my escort, in order to take the photo of those two girls. And I know that later on the story that the rep of UNFPA is crazy. I mean, I wanted to take a photo of the people playing cricket. But for me, that's a sign of hope. Two girls playing cricket in Afghanistan in 2022. When I talk to the community shura and elders in the villages around Jalalabad, and they're telling me that, young men disappear. Right? They are basically they see no hope, they see there are no jobs, they see no future. So they are always attracted to somebody who is more organized, and that is ISK, unfortunately, right now. But at the same province, it was also wonderful to see when you're speaking to some boys that did not join ISK, who is their role model. And those boys, they select a woman, not a man. Cricket is a very popular sport in Afghanistan, but they selected the Afghan woman who is a physician, who is now best football player in the world, and playing for the national squad in Denmark. And that tells you that there is a hope for Afghanistan, that the young people are, and particularly young men, are still, as they transition into adulthood, they still did not fully adopt the cultural, social, and very restricted gender norm. So let me just stop here because I'm sure that there will be a lot of questions.
Thank you so much, and good to leave off with some sentiment of hope as well. I just have two questions before we open up for questions from the room and those joining us digitally. Interesting to hear that when it was so turbulent last summer, and I think everybody else here was watching this 20 years of international community trying to assist the country, and then very much by surprise and almost overnight, completely new situation. You mentioned that you left the country, and but within 2 to 4 weeks you were back running operations. Given the factions, the conservative and the Haqqani networks, how is your dialogue, and how do you handle that? How do you get access to areas? How much time do you spend on just that?
Yeah, a lot of time. You know, it's everything is about localization. You know, it's it doesn't really. It is fascinating to see the trends, how they're changing. In the first part, you know, the central authority in Kabul would decide something, but that would not translate into provinces, because I already gave you an example. Some governor, they said, we don't care what ministry in Kabul say, we will continue education for girls. But now we also see the trends that it's also other way around. I mean, what was possible before in just talking with the governors, it's not now possible without the green light from central authority in Kabul. So I'm sometimes joking that usually on Thursday, when it's very late, I mean, weekend is Friday, Saturday, I have a plan what I'm going to do, but I know that over the weekend there will be surprises, and I might be traveling somewhere to try to remove some of those obstacles. So everything is about localization. I mean, talking to the de facto governor. I have to admit that we have on average not as much problem as we would anticipate because of the mandate, and probably due to the fact that for past 20 years, UNFPA was traditionally focusing on this wide area. And if you're looking what is now the politics of the de facto authorities and the Taliban, they really want to prove to the population that not only urban citizens living in urban areas are privileged ones. So they want to move the focus from urban to the rural areas. And UNFPA is the one that being traditionally present there for past 20 years. So that give us some credibility. And also, as I told you, family health houses, they've been operating in those remote areas. Majority of those family health houses were in the areas that were under Taliban control. So, because of that, I mean, we are not experiencing as much problem as one would anticipate. Probably that's one reason. The second reason is that due to the very strong community ties, our intervention is traditionally focusing on building strong alliances and partnership with the community. And I can give you a plethora of examples here how the community managed to solve situation where the politicians were not able to. I gave example earlier in the parliament about Khost province where, our protection services were closed, where the military group came and they said, like, this is un-Islamic, it has to be closed, you cannot provide services for women. And then we activated mechanisms to the directorate in the province. But before they were even started thinking how to solve the problem, the community elders, came to our protection centers and asked military groups to leave. We had some security incidents where also community elders managed to de-escalate the situation. So our traditional focus on and building our interventions with the community backing and support is probably another second element that give us a little bit more flexibility, and because of that, we are able to scale up our services, women-centered services in Afghanistan.
You really are getting the message across. You've been there for a long time and you actually can deliver in the country. I'm guessing that financing is a concern for you. Here in Sweden, we've had a big discussion about cuts to the ODA budget, especially on development issues. How concerned are you about funding the work you're doing? Just for those of you listening, the Swedish UNA also has a partnership with the UNFPA that we do fundraising together for your activities. Small addition, but how concerned are you about your long-term financing, and how is that going to impact your operations in the short term and long term?
Yeah. I'm very, very concerned. Obviously, Afghanistan is not anymore in a spotlight.
Right.
If you're looking what the HRP humanitarian response plan for Afghanistan for this year is 4.4 billion. And then there is transitional framework for 1 year, 3.6 billion. That is together $8 billion for 2022 alone. $8 billion. We are basically, I think, at the rate of 20 plus, percent. And we're not going to move, far from that number. We can go with. I don't want to speculate the numbers, but it is very difficult right now to, get the spotlight back to Afghanistan, and that's what's the reason why I'm also here, to speak up for the women and girls of Afghanistan. There are valid reasons. I mean, there are over 7 million. This morning I read somewhere in the news, it was Swedish news, I think 13 million, refugees, Ukrainian refugees out. Obviously the, government is doing what the government needs to do. But at the same time, I mean, there is, I will go back to my statement on what we are risking. And I know that the one question that I'm getting everywhere I go is what you're going to say to a taxpayer, about funding that was in billions of dollars provided to Afghanistan in the past 20 years. And my response is clear. I mean, we made some major progress. And I told you about maternal health. 1,000 to 638. It's incredible. It's incredible progress that should be probably recorded. I'm also a physician by training. So it is from the scientific perspective, from medical perspective, it is really incredible. But now we are risking to lose all of that in only 2 years. And not only in health, we are risking that in many other areas. One thing that was missing, and that is my always ask to have a kind of a restart and have a different type of a dialogue on OED and development assistance. We are looking, usually the donors are looking for quick results that can be produced within the program cycle. Quick results can be produced if you basically choose to travel the road frequently traveled. If you get a target that is easy to reach, if you stay within the urban areas, if you don't tackle, underlying causes of the problem. When you select to go for the real things that needs to be done, and those are the road less traveled, then results cannot be provided that quickly. I finished my statement with the signs of hope. I told you about young men that are still not affected by the cultural norms. That young man will be in 2 years the same mainstream Taliban way of thinking, if we basically let them go. But right now there are 0 programs that are focusing on voice engagement. So I think that we need to talk and encourage paradigm shift in the terms of moving from reacting to the problems, because what we do with the victims, I mean, I told you 178,000 women were provided psychosocial support by UNFPA, and that is basically friction of what is needed, because there are more and more women every day that are asking for support. But that women will still go back to their families. They will go back to their husband. They will be abused again and ask for the services again. Yeah. So I think a paradigm shift in terms of let's provide those services because they are critical and needed to save their lives. But at the same time, let's also think what is next for Afghanistan. And that next for Afghanistan will come in 10, 15 years. Because if we are able to scale up programs for young men, for young people at this point, and 67% of population of Afghanistan is below the age of 24, 67%. So imagine what we can do in 10 to 15 years from now. Those young people will be the critical mass that will tailor different kind of behavior. So let me stop here.
That's crazy figures. That 67% are under 24 years. Yeah. We have a few minutes left, and I'm going to open up from some questions from the room. We have one, Andrea here.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for interesting and informative talk. Last year I was a technical member of the Women Protection Center Trust Fund for Afghanistan. And my question, because you said basically that, if I understand correctly, that the service provision, and I assume NGOs as well, and the civil society kind of was clamped down, but now it's up and running again. Can you talk a little bit more about that and the relationship with the Taliban? Like, if services are up and running again for women and girls experiencing violence, how did you do that? What does that mean in practice, and how is that relationship with the Taliban?
I said the UNFPA service is up and running. And there is a difference, because if you're looking at the protection services that were traditionally organized in Afghanistan, there are different types. You know, many of those services were organized by the human rights-based organization, then women-led organization. Our services were organized by the community, with the community backing. It took much longer, but because of that community backing, we are able to continue with those services. You know, for obvious reason, you know, the other services that were, for example, shelters. You know, shelters had a struggle, you know, before Taliban, and particularly now. I mean, if you ask me, it's probably not even a good idea to go ahead with the shelters, because we cannot secure, you know, confidentiality. Who's going to protect those physical settings? Because that goes against ideology of people who are supposed to protect, you know, those physical settings. So we should be careful how much we actually ask. You know, human rights group, the same thing. I mean, the first one that suffered after takeover, after 15 of August, were human rights group and NGOs, and also women's-led group. So they all were first victim of the Taliban takeover. Our services survived because of the community links. And now we are working with other UN agencies and NGOs to use that model, and they was together to scale that up, because obviously it proved that it's functioning and working. And as I told you, I'm meeting with the de facto authorities in Taliban almost every week, with the de facto ministers, with the governors, with all of them, in order to remove obstacles for our services.
I'm mindful of time. I know that you have a very hectic schedule here in Sweden, so I think we will start wrapping up. And I will just ask you, is there something you would like to say to the Swedish audience, or what can we as a Swedish UNA do, or those of us who really care about the situation in the world and Afghanistan specifically?
So thanks for this opportunity. I guess, you know, we need as many advocates as possible for women and girls in Afghanistan. You know, I told you that they are, you know, out of the spotlight. You know, I dare to say that there is not as much focus as it used to be before. They are even, you know, when sometimes we try to pitch some stories to the media, I mean, earlier it was very easy. You know, I could get time on CNN and BBC. You know, now we cannot get a place anywhere because interest is somewhere else. Meanwhile, in 2022, you know, women of Afghanistan are denied the basic human rights. You know, they are denied the right to dream. They're denied the right to get education. I have my staff, national staff, who have girls and boys, and they have difficulties to explain to girls why they have to stay behind at home and not to go to the school like their brothers. You know, they are even denied to use the public transportation, to use work. So we need your voices to make sure that the focus is back to Afghanistan, because as I said, you know, there are two roads, and we have to be mindful of what is next for a country. Are we gonna come back in 10, 15 years talking and have the same discussion we have today? Or are we gonna come back and celebrate and say that we made the choices back in 2022 that made a huge difference in the life of those girls in the country?
Thank you so much, and thank you for your hard work. I know you'll be traveling now extensively, visiting Paris and Brussels and meeting here in Sweden with the key politicians and agencies. So we wish you the best of luck with your work and also the fundraising issues that you are tackling. To those of you here in the room and also those joining us online, I would like to say thank you for joining us. And if you found this interesting, please check out our webpage. You can either become a member and also support the UNA FPA collaboration we have. We take donations and other types of engagements as well. So thank you so much, and have a nice midsummer that's coming up this week. Bye.
Bye.